It's in progress. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. And for those of you remote and for those of you who couldn't be here, you're missing loads of fun. May I get a mover and a seconder to put on the floor everything that's before us today? Councillor Martin, Councillor Scully. Now we have a recommendation which we will discuss. And what else is before us today? I guess just the minutes. So if we could get a vote on the minutes, unless there are any errors or omissions. Let's go ahead and do that.
All those in favor?
On the minutes. That's good. John, you like the minutes?
Yeah, they're fine.
Okay, good show, good show. So on the item before us today, the recommendation to receive and do that other stuff. Emma, did you want to say anything about what's before us or currently?
I could provide a high level overview if you like.
Please.
So basically, through our research and our analysis of the direction that we've received, we've identified some gaps in our training. So we're going to provide more robust training to committee members, to new members, to chairs and vice chairs. So as part of our interview process, a lot of chairs, found it hard to transition. So we will be providing specialized training for chairs, vice chairs. We're also staff liaisons who are providing support to the committee. In addition, when we conducted the mandate review for the Wall of Recognition Task Force, there are a limited amount of members who are eligible to be modern day candidates. So we're proposing changes to the criteria. Right now it's 10 or more years. And so we're proposing 3 or more terms. There are a lot of terms of council that weren't 4-year terms. They're either 2-year terms, 3-year terms, and that's just from past legislation. We determined that 3 terms is pretty sufficient. We've also recommended that the Finance Committee meetings be held quarterly and any non-routine finance reports be brought forward to CalPA. This will help streamline staff resources and those types of things. SPAC mandate review, there were no substantive changes. For the Appeals Committee, staff have conducted preliminary research, found some municipalities that have appeals committees. We've met with internal departments and we will bring forward a report to Q2 of 2025 with our recommendations on how that's going to look and what processes we need to have in place. We've also made some proposed changes to our appointments policy. So currently under Chapter 26, we have various boards and advisory committees. And within those, we have interest groups that sit as part of the committee. So let's say for the Accessibility Advisory Committee, we have the CNIB. And anytime that they have a staff member change, we have to call appointments committee. The appointments committee has to approve the one person. They usually only send us one person. And then we have to bring forward to a council meeting. We're saying, council has determined that they want the CNIB or whatever organization. If the organization wants to send the clerk's department a letter stating this is who is going to be the rep, we're saying that's fine with us. It's going to streamline the appointments process. It's going to help ensure quorum and continuous operation of the committee without having to kind of go through those hurdles. In addition, we're also suggesting that the BIA and the library conduct their own recruitment searches with their own staff and their board members. They will still need to use our approved forms, and they will still need to submit to the appointments committee the preferred candidate with the other applications that they received as well. So at the end of the day, council will still have that final determination. And that's pretty much it. High level.
Excellent, thank you. Members of the committee, questions, comments? Mayor, yes, go ahead, please.
I think staff have done a very commendable job as well, the committee members as well, yourself and Councillor Sullivan. I think you've made some very good recommendations to us. And I certainly am very supportive.
Mayor, thank you very much for that. Councillor Celeste, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, thank you. I too think it's a good report. The only thing that I was that caught my eye was we typically, as ward councilors, divide into and want for the two standing committees, and one is finance and one is social services. And what we're creating here is an imbalance of, I guess, meeting obligation. The one group would meet 4 times a year, the other group would meet 11 times a year. So you're striking that, I guess, imbalance. In some cases, it won't matter. In my case, it doesn't matter. I'm not employed, so I'm okay. But if you have 2 people that are employed, I would think it would cause a bit of a problem for those two folks. And I don't have an answer or a solution. It's just an observation that we're setting this up for an imbalance.
Thank you for that, Councilman.
Yeah, well, just maybe talking a little further, is it necessary? I know a lot of the meetings we have at social services, there's like 1 item or 2 items. Did we look at that and see if that should be every other month?
Through the chair, we did look at that. We have a pretty extensive terms of reference with the county and with social services, and we have provided the chair with a schedule of reports that are going forward in the future. So I believe there's sufficient reports going forward. In terms of the finance committee, our procedural bylaw does permit, let's say if you're not able to go to the finance committee, your ward mate could go in your place and have all of the voting rights of the committee member at social services. So if there's imbalance there, I would probably maybe suggest that perhaps the ward councillors want to share the workload with that. In terms of finance meetings being quarterly, typically finance committee meetings are very short, ranging from 10 to 20 minutes. So there's kind of already imbalance there in the first place. What we're providing is more of a robust finance committee meeting that may take a bit longer because it is quarterly.
And additionally, Councillor, the finance committee meetings generally from now on are going to take quite a bit longer. The previous one that we did in September, a bit of an anomaly because the review of department report was so meticulously well done that all but 2 members of the committee had no questions of the presenter. But I suspect as we get into some of the bigger departments, the time commitment will probably begin to even out, Councillor. Councillor Sicoli, did I see your hand?
You did, thank you. A question of the clerks. Is there a way for us to perhaps regulate, or to enforce that the councillors switch off year after year as far as the 2 committees,
So through
unless
the
otherwise agreed upon?
through the chair, we do provide the annual appointments to those committees. And at that point in time, there's an opportunity for councillors to switch if they like for the different committees.
Yeah, I'm aware of the,
I think if that were to be the case, we would have to implement that in our appointments policy and make it stipulation in the appointments policy that the counselors would alternate on the committee. But that would have to be passed at council.
Do we have a current provision that councillors must agree on the assignments? That's my recollection.
Yeah, that there's something-
Councillor Martin, do you recall that?
Now that there's something in there that if the councillors don't agree, then they automatically switch.
I believe we go to a vote if the counselors don't agree.
So there is methodology. And there may be, perhaps the councillor would want to think about something perhaps we could introduce that would make that happen.
Yeah.
Okay,
my brain's going.
this comes to council next month, right?
Yes, this goes to CalPA next month.
So perhaps Councillor Sicoli, you could maybe have a chat with clerks and introduce that as an amendment when it comes. Okay, yeah. Further discussion? A couple of things I want to implement, reading the word implement, that I wanted to raise. We are implementing non-mandatory annual training sessions.
Yes,
So the initial training session is mandatory. The subsequent training sessions are not obligatory.
correct.
Okay. Now, does clerk staff have an estimate of the onerous amount of time that unpaid volunteers have to commit to before they can actually sit in a committee chair? Sorry, in a committee seat.
How much time they would spend fulfilling the duties of a committee member?
How much time they have to spend on our mandatory HR training before they can assume their seat?
I believe the mandatory HR training takes 3 to 4 hours,
Yeah.
depending on how fast you go through the modules. We did confirm with our HR department that all the modules they're recommending are still mandatory. That's why we implemented the non-mandatory training, because they
Yeah.
do have to complete 3 to 4 hours of HR training. And then our training on top of this is going to be voluntary if they want to get more procedural advice.
So is there a roadmap to get to something where the prospective committee member simply reads all the material and says, yes, I agree, rather than going through this onerous process?
We could look
Could you
into that.
inquire
We can
into that,
inquire.
please? Okay.
Yes, yes,
Because it is a deterrent to people.
yeah.
And I've heard people say I was going to apply, but, Emma told me, or Greg told me, or Rosie told me that it's 4 hours work. The heck with that, right?
A couple of years ago, we did do an extensive review of the types of training that committee members had to do. And we worked with HR to only have the bare bones of what's required, violence, harassment, those types of things. So we could take that back and come back, and
Yeah,
even if we put that in the posting on the proposed time that they need to take training, so that there were no surprises. That could work as well too.
could we get the link to that onerous requirement so we could all have a look at it?
Sure.
Yes, thank you. My next question was, we had a discussion about enabling council members to serve as chairs in some
Yes,
circumstances. Did we capture that in the report? Okay,
that's done already.
it's
That-
already done.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So we're reducing the criteria eligibility, right, for Wall of Fame or Wall of Infamy, as the case may be. So 10 years now, regardless of the number of, 3 terms,
Yes,
regardless of the number of years per term.
correct.
So you had, going way back, you had 1-year terms, but those are captured in the historic folks. So do you have any idea how many are going to be eligible once we implement this?
We haven't looked into that.
Okay. Okay, we don't need to either.
Yeah.
No point in, showing that necessarily. And we no longer will have to do 2 nominees a year. We do want to do 1 nomination per year, right?
Yeah, so we put that, since we've been having issues having eligible candidates, there's a stipulation in the policy that said modern day and historical. So pretty much all we're doing is and or. So
Yeah.
if there is no legible candidate, we can only bring 1. But if there are 2, if there's 1 modern, 1 historical, then those will be provided.
So the Environmental and Sustainable Policy Advisory Committee. Is no longer going to be able to initiate independent activities. If I read this correctly. We're scratching out the and undertake following the word promote. It's related to education, outreach, and other activities.
So I believe they,
Top of page 5, item C.
administer and support. Yes, so clause C, they will only be promoting educational outreach and other activities related to the environment.
And the city council reps on that committee can ensure that what comes forward is logical and sensible and speaks to the city's goals and objectives, right? Okay. Chris, I wanted to highlight what you talked about with respect to the library board and
Yes,
BIA having to follow the city of Brantford's HR policies with respect to application forms. Should we make it more specific that there cannot be any supplemental information requested? Because when it says that they're going to use our form, it doesn't say they can't step beyond and do the type of thing that we saw recently.
if you'd like to make an amendment to clarify that, this would be the time to do that. Right now only speaks to the approved City of Brantford application.
Okay. What would you suggest to further restrict their rogue nature?
That's a tough one too, because you know, they'll be, say they want to do interviews. Are we going to ask them for their interview questions? It kind of, we kind of get lost in the weeds there. It's really up to this committee. The reason why we put that in there is because these are local boards and local bodies that have their own legislation, their own staff, their own board members, and we want to give them a bit more autonomy.
Sure.
And so that is why we're only suggesting the actual City of Brantford approve application.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else, guys? Then we'll go to the question.
All those in favor?
No, I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I was wondering why we would want the SPAC committee to undertake to do anything other than just promote things that are already,
I believe this was their own recommendation,
that
so
was their own. recommendation.
perhaps they don't have the time to be able to undertake those types of initiatives, but they still want to promote those. So that's coming right from
If
the
it's coming
SPAC
from
committee.
them, that's fine. I
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify that. If it's coming from them specifically, then I would support it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, thank you.
Now we'll go to the question.
All those in favor? Carries.
John, you in favor? There we go. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Do we have, is there a recommendation to disband?
Yes,
It is, right, okay. We are done then, thank you.
awesome.
Our
Thank you.
final meeting. We'll look back fondly on this, I'm sure.
Thank you, Counselor.